All right, Andrew, hit us with this week's Spoilercast theme song.
This is ground control to Colonel Glenn. Taraji's done the math.
And you can come back again.
Yeah, you can. Unlike Major Tom, you get to come
That's
home.
right. You get to come home because of Taraji P. Henson.
Woo!
Welcome to the Siftpop Spoiler Podcast, a compatriot podcast, a companion podcast, if you will, to the official Siftpop podcast, where we actually don't mind going into spoilers. The theme song is different every single week because we don't want to give anything away.
And it keeps me on my toes.
We're going to talk about Hidden Figures spoilers. I don't know that there's a lot really to go into here because, I mean, it's a true story. We know we got the guy into
John
space.
Glenn does not die in space, ladies and gentlemen. Spoiler!
Right. I guess we could talk about specific scenes, kind of what happens with these three women. One of them becomes the first African American engineer.
Yes.
Which I thought the courtroom scene of her story was really cool.
Yeah.
Where
you
she
could
had
be the
to
first
convince,
ever.
Yeah, she had to convince a white judge in Virginia that she could take a class that was not supposed to be allowed for African Americans to take, or because I think the school was segregated.
Yeah.
And so it was a white school, and she wasn't supposed to be there.
This is even after, they made integration legal, but still the states decided to make it illegal.
Right. Yeah, the states were fighting the federal government on, segregation laws and those kind of things.
Yeah.
And especially in Virginia. So I really found it powerful the way she talked to the judge. And that was one of the things about the movie that I really loved about these women is they were so firm in being themselves and being what they believed. And at the same time, they gave respect to every human being around them, even if those human beings were racist, even if those human beings were,
they did not
treating them
reciprocate.
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I did love that about these women.
Yeah. Still, what's her name? Janelle's character, Mary Jackson, who we're talking about.
Yeah.
She had the most sass out of everybody, and you
Right.
could definitely tell at the beginning of the movie when that cop shows up. He's like, we didn't decide to break down on the side of the road. And they're like, shut up. What are you doing?
That's a great scene, too, though, because eventually he gives them an escort to where they're going.
And they're like, we are chasing a cop right now.
I know, yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, as far as her story goes, I think hers was the smallest of the three stories.
Absolutely. We're supposed to focus mainly on Octavia and Taraji.
Yeah, and I think mainly on Taraji. But Octavia got the second most. Her story is basically of somebody who would not be paid or called, given the title of a supervisor.
Yeah.
Even though she was doing all of those jobs. And not only that, somebody who, when she found out because we call it the West, they called it the West computing system.
Yeah.
And you would think, oh, yeah, because that's where all the computers were. Yeah, you're actually right. They were called computers, but they were human beings.
Yeah, you have to really break down the word computer.
Uh-huh.
It's people computing math.
Yeah, exactly.
So we think computers now as laptops or PCs or Macs or anything, but no, computers back in the day were people literally on pen and paper doing the math.
But when this was happening was also the transition of the digital age in many ways, too.
IBM.
Computer machines were becoming more and more available to big corporations, especially the government. They called them IBM machines.
Yeah, and that was a subplot for Octavia's character because initially her main goal was to become a supervisor. She finds her wheelhouse whenever IBM is being set up at Langley. She's like, I need to learn everything in secret about this new machine so my value transfers over whenever this thing negates my abilities.
And how smart is that, to see your obsolescence coming and to head it off at the pass?
Yeah. Most people would be looking at the door for other venues.
Yeah.
She found something within NASA, which was still at Langley, and to make herself valuable. And not only her entire department. She took it upon herself to ladies, if you want a job in the next couple weeks, learn this new skill.
Yeah.
And she transferred everybody, and she became
her entire
supervisor.
department, her entire department went from being computers to working with computers.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool. And that was the one thing I looked in the Wikipedia. I was like, no, that seemed a little too much. It was like, yeah, really, and that actually really happened. She, turned their division into the head of computing by learning it all on her own. And,
stealing books from the library.
The library scene was the one I wanted to talk about with her where, she was told she couldn't have these books because they were for the, the white library people, and she stole it anyway. And she told her kid, and her kid was like, "Did you steal that book, Mom?" And
I pay taxes.
She's like, "I pay taxes. I paid for that book.
It's my book."
And she said something about, "Don't let anyone tell you that they get to decide what is right and wrong. What is right and wrong is in what you do," or something along those lines. And no matter what the world around you says, so important, especially going through the racial tensions of that era. And I think it was a conversation about segregation she was having with her kids.
Yeah.
And even though everybody says segregation is right, that doesn't make it right. And I think that's really valuable to remember. Right and wrong isn't defined by our laws.
Yeah.
It's not.
What other scene was like super powerful to you? I'm got something stuck in my throat there. Sorry.
Oh, well, I mean, the one that I will always go back to is where Taraji P. Henson's character had finally had enough of going to the bathroom that was a mile away.
Yeah.
And she lets loose with just everything that had been building up. And
the coffee.
Yeah. And that was what I was talking about in the main episode, one of the specific scenes that talks about that, the racism of the era or whatever, that here in this group of mostly white guys, and this black woman comes in and they make a little sign for a coffee pot that she can drink of. And they think they're doing her a favor.
Yeah.
They think that they're being considerate by making that happen, and they just don't realize how inherently racist that is.
Yeah.
So
then another scene was Kevin Costner knocking down the sign.
Right, which directly follows that, because she says, what nobody knew was she was walking half a mile each way to use the restroom because there were no colored restrooms. In Langley.
And she had to take her work with her to do on the way.
Right.
And then on the way back, and while she was
using
the restroom.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that scene where she lets loose and says, "You're treating me like a dog," was so powerful.
It's so great. You just bought every second of it.
Mm-hmm. Another scene, and it wasn't subtle, but it really stuck out to me, is at the very end of the movie, they run and they make her do all this math. Like, here, we need you to do the go, or is it go stop court, or
the go no go.
Yeah, go no go math again, because our IBM machine isn't giving us accurate enough coordinates.
By the way, is IBM machine repetitive? Is the M stand for machine?
Yes, it is. So, International Business Machine.
Yeah, there you go.
So the International Business Machine. So they have her do the math, and she's running it back, and she runs in and she gives them the math, and then they shut the door in her face.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
That really hit me pretty good there. So,
well, and it's symbolic of the entire point of the movie.
Yeah.
Which is they did all these things and nobody knows about it. It reminded me a lot of, what was the one that came out with Benedict Cumberbatch a couple years ago?
Oh, Star Trek Into Darkness.
No.
You're talking about The Imitation Game.
Yes. That was great.
Thank you.
The Imitation Game, yeah. Where here's just a story that could not be, now in this case, these stories could have been told. In that case, it was a story that, for security reasons, they thought could not be told. But again, just somebody who you just didn't know did everything they did, in a time of real crisis.
Yeah. Well, another facet of Imitation Game was his sexual preferences.
Right, exactly,
Yeah. But you're right, his story couldn't be told because you can't let the Nazis know that you're breaking their codes.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
This movie, I just want to watch it again. It's a movie it's a multiple viewing movie for me, honestly.
It goes down easy, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that could be something to do with, the Disney-esque smoothing out. It just makes it's easier to...
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit.
It's like a smooth pill being swallowed as opposed to like a non-capsule that you got to chew up. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know that there's much else to touch on. That scene that you talk about is kind of the climactic scene. Eventually, they do invite her in. She is allowed to watch, and a big deal is made about her being able to put her name on the reports, which we weren't sure she was going to be able to do. And the movie is full of that kind of stuff where you just get to learn more and more. There's also a little bit of a romantic subplot that I don't know if it needed to be in there.
I literally just wanted to talk about Mahershala Ali's character,
Go ahead.
Colonel Johnson. So I was, right after I watched the movie, I went on my YouTube feed and I saw Jeremy Johns had just posted a review of this. And he said in his review that they walked a fine line between making the love aspect of this movie irrelevant, because you, at the same time as seeing all these great things they're doing as far as like the science and math, you have to humanize them and, you know, show their personal lives and how that's affected.
Right.
At the same time, though, it's not imperative to the story.
Right.
So you have to decide, do you put this in and humanize them at the same time you're sacrificing, kind of messing with the vibe, not the vibe, but the...
I didn't mind. I think you can get the same thing just with the mother-kid stuff.
It's very true, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think you can...
The very first scene where she's putting in the bed, that would have done it for me.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. I didn't mind it so much because the scenes that they had, it wasn't about their romance completely. It was also about his misunderstanding of her as a person. You know, his having to come to grips with her being... in NASA and saying, you know, can a woman really do that? You know,
and so that was another thing.
He was kind of the voice of sexism.
Yeah, gender relations as opposed to racial.
Exactly. So I think it did serve a little bit of a purpose.
It also focused on the point of, yes, there were people in the African American community who thought that they couldn't do specific things. It wasn't Caucasian against African American. There were people who were questioning their abilities in their own communities at the time.
Sure.
So I thought that was also a very fascinating aspect of this movie as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So. Anything else you wanted to touch on?
Great movie. I'm done.
Yeah, I think it's well worth a watch, and I know this, you know, one of our shorter spoiler episodes, but I think if nothing else, just to say, hey, here's a really great movie you can watch with anyone at any time, and you know, have not only be entertained, but learn some valuable stuff about people who made the spaceships go.
Yeah.
It's cool stuff.
Not only entertaining, also a very important movie.
Yeah.
Great story, definitely needed to be told.
The movie we're talking about, of course, is Space Race.
Yes, I was going to say Space Jam, but...
Hidden Figures.
Yes.
See it.